It's Sunday school. Yes, it's Sunday school. Let's talk about demons. No, I'm going to talk about an article that I wrote for as part of a book project that I did with Christopher Hyatt and uh, the late great David P. Wilson as an illustrator. Uh, where the book is Aleister Crowley's Illustrated Goetia. It came out in 1991, and I think it's still in print by a couple of publishers. So uh, it's a it's a real fun book, and I hope everybody would get one and enjoy it. But I got to remember this is a much younger. This is a 1991 uh, Lon Milo DuQuette. Uh, and it was one of the first things that I wrote and got published and things like that. And I was working with Dr. Hyatt on four works actually. Uh, and so we called this Aleister Crowley's Illustrated Goetia, but the title is a bit misleading because although it was influenced heavily by Aleister Crowley, it was a dissection of the classic fifth book of the Lemegeton, which is usually published as Lesser Key of Solomon, and stories and introductions and explanations and modern rituals. And so, well, I'll read you a little something here in just a second. But in it, I tell the story that I would, just a couple of years later, would flesh out about my first invocation of a Goetic spirit, the spirit Orobos. Well, there we go. It's not reflected. That eventually got published in this book, My Life with the Spirits. But in passing, I told that story of that particular, my first particular evocation in this book, Aleister Crowley's Illustrated Goetia. And as more people have read this than have read this, I'm going to share that with you uh, on today's Sunday school. So the chapter title in this book is The Dangers of High Magic. Now, that was sort of a facetious title because especially in 1991, the occult community was sort of at odds with the dangers, if you will, of Aleister Crowley and the dangers of low magic, or the dangers of hands-on Goetic evocation, Solomonic magic, circles, triangles, and because people were just starting to get into the sublime aspects of modern ceremonial magic and Crowley and the holy books of Thelema and serious Kabbalistic climb up the tree of life. The Goetic magic was getting sort of a bad reputation. Oh, you do that stuff. Oh, well, and so I, and of course, I'd been doing Goetia since the 70s, and I know for a fact, from my own personal experience, that what they would call low magic, in order to make it work, actually has to be a form of magic of the highest nature, highest caliber, highest spiritual echelons. So to me, it was sort of a facetious thing. But let's see here. The danger of high magic. It's chapter 3 here. Now, the way Dr. Hyatt and I would write in partnership, I would more or less take over a chapter and take things so far. He didn't presume to do much more than correct my spelling, and then I didn't stick my nose into a lot of the chapters and material that he wrote. So, as he had never at the time done a Goetic evocation, it fell to me to contribute this chapter 3. It begins with the epigraph from Crowley's Magic and Theory and Practice. And chapter 3 is called The Danger of High Magic. The single supreme ritual is the attainment of the knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel. It is the raising of the complete man in a vertical, straight line, going up the tree of life. Okay. Any deviation from this line tends to become black magic. Any other operation is black magic. If the magician needs to perform any other operation than this, it's only lawful insofar as it's a necessary preliminary to that one work. So that was from Crowley's Theory and Practice. It is no secret that to many modern students of esoterica, Goetia, that's Solomonic magic, has a decidedly shady reputation. On a scale of spiritual practices, one might find Goetia sandwiched somewhere between pacts with the devil and addiction to the Ouija board, or Ouija. This attitude is understandable. After all, Goetia is the intentional conjuration of spirit beings who are, by definition, fallen angels, evil spirits, demons. From their infernal abodes, these naughty spirits are called forth to act as personal servants of the Goetic magician, to extend his power and execute his will on earth. The magician must be ever vigilant to the wiles of the spirit. If he is unskilled or loses control even for an instant, he runs the risk of being obsessed, possessed, or even destroyed. Sounds uncomfortably like black magic. Such behavior is certainly beneath the altruistic purity of purpose that characterize the quest and disciplines of high magic, and can serve only to bring out the lowest qualities of the practitioner's character. So goes the argument against Goetic evocation. And so far as it goes, it's a point well taken. Yes, the spirits in question are of an infernal variety. But exactly what does that mean? If we embrace for a moment the popular nomenclature of high magic, infernal relates to subconscious stratum of the human psyche. Spirits inhabiting these regions would then be the personifications of powers or energies that lie buried in our subconscious minds. Qualities of our consciousness we have disowned. They are fallen because they have slipped from the conscious control of the deity, ourselves. Yes, they are dangerous because while they remain unmastered, they can surface unbidden and wreak all the havoc modern psychology blames on, quote, things hidden in the subconscious mind, unquote. To charge that To the charge that such practices bring out the worst qualities in the magician's character, the Goetic practitioner pleads guilty, pointing out this is precisely the purpose of this variety of evocation. If these disowned qualities are not brought forth, identified, and controlled, the magician, like the rest of humanity, is doomed to be at the mercy and the caprice of his own subconscious demons, never being allowed the opportunity to subdue these denizens of his psychic menagerie. Now, in the year, I'm digressing here, in the years since the publication of this book and the years since I've wrote it, the practice of shadow work, although not a completely modern thing, but shadow work has become such a wonderful and important adjunct to magicians of all levels and of all ilk, if you will. You don't have to be a Goetic magician to do shadow work. It's a very important part of understanding who and what you are and what is making you act the way you do. So had that been on the tip of everybody's tongue back in 1991, I would have brought up the concept of shadow work, at least as a reference. But are the spirits of the Goetia simply subjective components of the magician's mind, or is there really an independent objective quality to their nature? This fundamental question may never be satisfactorily answered due to the fact that no one really understands the nature of matter. But one thing is certain, one who has never experienced a Goetic evocation is not qualified to even voice the most educated opinion on the subject. It's one thing to be well read on a subject, it's quite another to be part of the subject itself. It's an unfortunate fact that there are many individuals who make magic their life without making their life magic. Even the most talented and brilliant expounders of the arts sometimes lose sight of this and focus instead on historical or technical aspects of the subject to such a degree that they ignore completely its relevance to their daily life and happiness. In light of this, I feel it'd be helpful to relate the circumstances surrounding my first Goetic evocation. I beg the reader's attention to what follows because I feel it contains many of the major components necessary for a successful Goetic evocation. I have omitted the name of my former magic teacher, as it would be recognized by a great many readers. Okay, well, that's Phyllis Seckler. Okay, the dear lady, the brilliant lady. And at the time, I'm not sure she would appreciate it if I would have mentioned her name. I think right now, wherever she is, she does not object that I share that with you. Under the heading, With My Back Against the Wall. It was 1975, and I've never been so desperate in my life. My decision to end a successful 14-year career in music had been one of life and death. Mine. It was either continue a lifestyle that was destroying my health and my relationship with my wife and young son, or risk not being able to support them. I was trained for nothing practical. Even my college education, such as it was as a drama major. The pocket change I was still earning from recording royalties and guitar lessons wasn't enough to feed us, let alone pay the rent and bills. I had no job, no car, no money, no prospects, no hope. One of the few bright spots that characterized this period was my discovery of the writings of Aleister Crowley and my involvement in the disciplines of ceremonial magic. Since the mid-1960s, I had been a student of Eastern mysticism and Western Hermeticism, and my interests had finally brought me into contact with a magical society that I believed long extinct. I passionately involved myself in this group and subsequently became student of one of its senior officers. So I'm speaking about the OTO and the AA there, of course. A charming woman in her 50s. Yeah. She continued to impress me with what I perceived to be her balanced, logical approach to the subject of magic. Her teacher had been the personal student of Aleister Crowley and had been a resident at his famous or infamous Abbey of Thelema in Cefalù, Sicily in the 1920s, and that's Jane Wolfe. I was thrilled to be a link in such a historic magical chain, and my spiritual practices became the entire focus of my life. Periodically, my teacher reviewed my diaries and we maintained constant correspondence. I also visited her as often as I could. However, my deteriorating situation on the material plane was a source of major anxiety, and the distraction inevitably began to affect my ability to concentrate on my spiritual practices. What was the use of all this study if I couldn't use it in a practical way to improve my life? My teacher cautioned me not to mix my planes. If you need a job, just go out and get a job, she wrote. Learn to walk before you can run. It's good advice. Performing magic to help get a job was, in her words, low magic, and would distract from the great work I was pledged to perform. I couldn't make it clear to her that I was trying to improve the situation by normal means, but I felt the need to magically lubricate the situation. Obviously, there was a great stumbling block before me, and after all, didn't the esoteric wisdom of the ages teach us to look first in ourselves for such obstacles? I was familiar with the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Goetia, and it seemed to, indeed, my copy of it was the facsimile edition of the first edition that was printed in hardbound in a very limited edition by Jimmy Page, and it was given to me by Helen Parsons Smith. That was my Goetia. Okay. I was familiar with the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Goetia, and it seemed to me that many of the 72 spirits, if one considered them actual entities capable of affecting change on the material plane, could provide such help. I wanted to perform a Goetic evocation for the purpose of improving the conditions of my material life. This suggestion to my teacher evoked in her an almost hysterical response. Well, it wasn't hysterical. I can't honestly say that I ever saw Phyllis in a hysterical state. But it was a strong reaction. Let's see. She told me in no uncertain terms that I was not ready to practice any form of Goei vocation, and she was right. She stressed that only magicians who had already achieved the highest levels of illumination were qualified to do so. Quote, once you achieve the knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel, you will see all of this as unnecessary. Unquote. You can't do it until such a time that you don't need to do it. But how could I attain the mental and emotional equilibrium necessary to achieve such lofty spiritual heights while my life remains so screwed up? Is it required by the gods that illumination comes only to the illuminated? I didn't wish to be disrespectful to her, yet I was sensing a real blind spot in our relationship. When I asked her if she had ever performed a Goei vocation, she answered, quote, certainly not. That's low magic, unquote. And that's how I ended that chapter. I'm just going to take us just a little bit further today, just sort of to finish the thought. For the next 9 months, I continued with my disciplines of high magic, rising in the pre-dawn hours for yoga, pranayama, and ceremonial work with the pentagram and hexagram rituals. I enjoyed the work very much and kept a detailed magical diary and dream records. I constructed and consecrated my magical weapons, mixed the holy oil of Abramelin, and memorized the recommended texts. My teacher seemed pleased with my progress. By the fall of 1976, my situation in the real world had degenerated terribly. I didn't have a car or a telephone, and that made job hunting difficult. And this is way before the internet. The temporary positions I did manage to secure were so far away that what little they paid was all but taken up by the expense to get there. To say I was distracted by my anxiety would be a cruel understatement. My self-esteem was at an all-time low, and I began to entertain thoughts too dark to relate. My back was against the wall. As a last resort, and against my teacher's instructions, I decided to perform a Goei vocation with the express purpose of turning my life around and achieving some level of mastery over my existence. I wrote in my diary, quote, I must succeed because the consequences of failure at this point are unthinkable, unquote. I turned my attention to the only Goetic text available to me at that time, which is that Jimmy Page facsimile edition. I went down the list of spirits and their attributes and settled on number 55, Orobos. The 55th spirit is Orobos. He is a great and mighty prince, appearing at first like a horse. But after the command of the exorcist, he puts on the image of a man. His office is to discover all things past, present, and to come. Also to give dignities and prelacies, and the favor of friends and foes. He gives true answers of divinity and of the creation of the world. He's very faithful unto the exorcist and will not allow him to be tempted of any spirit. He governs 20 legions of spirits. Orobos seemed ideal for my needs. First, I lacked the dignity to properly care for myself and my family. At the time, I had no idea what prelacies meant. Second, in order to pull my life together, I'd need the favor of both friends and foes. Third, because of my studies, I needed confidence in my divinatory abilities and a good understanding of the Holy Kabbalah. Finally, I needed a spirit in whom I could trust. Orobos seemed like the perfect magical sidekick. Orobos it would be. Now, that's all I'm going to read today from Aleister Crowley's Illustrated Goetia. This particular edition is from New Falcon, and I think it's also published by Original Falcon. I know it is, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if either of them are in print, but I think they're available. The idea that the descriptions outlined in the Goetia itself, the Lesser Key of Solomon, many of the descriptions of the spirits have what their duties are or their talents are. They all have a description of what they do. And some of them are really archaic and obscure. They cause corpse lights to appear on sepulchres, or each of them has a specific thing that they do, and at first glance, it seems like most of them just do shit that isn't done anymore. Nobody needs the corpse light on the. But the idea of a Goetic magician to be going down this shopping list is for them to see metaphorically what, say, corpse lights on a sepulcher might mean in their particular situation. Corpse lights on a sepulcher, ghost illumination, if you will, on over a dead person, an interred dead person. This is stupid example. I don't know anybody who's done this, but somebody might be yoked with the duty or the responsibility of writing a eulogy for a great person that they knew, or to speak at their funeral or something else. And in a case like that corpse lights on a sepulcher might make sense, and a person might want to turn their attention to that particular spirit if they wanted to, as I said here in 1991, lubricate the situation. Anyway, that's that. David Wilson, who in his career before his premature and untimely death, that's a long story in itself. Poor David, we loved him dearly. Over his brief but intense magical career, he evoked most, if not all, of the 72 spirits in his private workings. Now, David was like a cartoonist, and he provided 72 illustrations for the spirits. And there's what he had for Orobos. Now, Oribos didn't look exactly like that during my first. Uh, as a matter of fact, I had to look at him through very, very damaged eyeballs at the time. But there's the classic rough uh, uh, sigil. Now, usually you see these sigils all neatly reduced and squinched into a circle medallion that you use. But originally they were sort of hand drawn on a page, and that's what Oribos sort of looked like, the sigil. And uh, we just have passed out of the 10-degree uh, period that Oribos was the the spirit of it ended October 2nd. Anyway, that's Sunday school for today. I've been spending the last few weeks uh, with my author's hat on, sitting in the living room, which is less messy than my office, with a computer on my lap, uh, working on a new book project. Uh, and and I'll probably be doing that right up through spring of next year. Uh, and that's if I'm really lucky. Anyway, that's what I'm doing. Constance said that I should give you a warning today about my mixing my tie with this shirt. But she says I should always wear a shirt and tie for Sunday school. So you've been warned. If you play this back, look away. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.